Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Multispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour. To be a part of the program, it is a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624. Send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalaya. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you as another episode of the Ask Noah show kicks off this hour. Joining me, my co-host, Mr. Steve Ovens. Welcome in, sir.
You enjoying the fall weather?
Oh, I couldn't be happier with the fall weather. Be honest with you, Steve, I'm going to miss the fact that summer fell on a weekend this year. And as we head into the, 8 arduous months of winter and indoor is, although I have a new plan this winter, I'm going to try. I'll tell you if it's successful. I mounted a hammock in my basement. Ask me why I did that.
Why did you do that?
I'm going to try to imitate the outdoors, but I'm going to imitate the outdoors, and instead of being surrounded by useless things like trees and bushes and grass and dirt and stuff like that, I'm going to be surrounded by things like computers and screens and technology and things that I can play with and do stuff with.
I feel like you're not going to get as good a rest as you think you will.
Probably not. And I probably will significantly contribute to depression because I'm not going to have any vitamin D. So I might have to get one of those little lamps or something and shine on my face.
You're definitely not going to sleep well then.
Hey, joining us, it's a special episode tonight, is I think my longest friend in town, all the way from Pasco, Washington. Alex, welcome in.
Hello.
Thanks for making the time to be here.
You're welcome.
Is this your inaugural appearance on Ask Noah?
I believe it is. I don't know.
How have I done 458 episodes and not had you on the program?
I believe I've talked on Ask Noah before.
So you are a professional pilot.
I am.
And one of the things that I thought would be interesting to talk about tonight is there are a number of things that you have turned me on to by way of just going to college together and learning some of those things, as well as just driving down the road and you saying, do something like this instead of like that. Mm-hmm. You've learned things as where you are a very process-driven person. Mm-hmm. Your job is very task-oriented, and it means that, but they all have to be done in a very specific way and the right way every time, or a lot of people die.
Yeah, you could say that a lot of pilots are autistic, and we probably are.
Obsession with transportation.
Yeah.
So anyway, as the night rolls on, as the episode rolls on, Alex will join us, and we're going to talk about everyday ways that you can leverage the lessons learned by aviation. But first, your questions, they always go to the front of the line. You can send them in by giving us a call at 1-855-450-NOAH or email live@asknoahshow.com. Steve, you want to get to the emails?
Let's do it.
Our first email comes in from Fred. Fred writes, "Hi, folks. Google search has been incrementally worse at times. Lately, I've been using DuckDuckGo and Bing search. The latter makes me a little sick inside, but Google will only get worse if it continues to maintain its 90% share of the search market. I'm currently trying a user-funded ad-free search engine called Kagi. You can sign up and get a 100 query trial to test it out. No credit card required. I don't use Kagi for all of my searches right now, but it's growing on me. Anyway, I thought I'd point out Kagi in case you haven't seen it before." And then he links to a blog post and twit.tv. So I guess, Steve, two things are true for me. One is I have not previously heard of this. Two is I don't know that I've been super disappointed with DuckDuckGo, at least not enough that I've gone looking for an alternative. What do you think?
So I am definitely familiar with Kagi. I have several colleagues at work that have mentioned it to me, and they use it for work profession, like just because it does a better job, they believe. I guess we all are finding a way to supplement the search game. So I still use DuckDuckGo. I honestly have found that it's been getting better. I started using it as soon as I became aware of it, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And at the beginning, it was rough. I'm not going to lie. It was one of those, I'm sticking with this out of principle. But honestly, part of it is I use Perplexity a lot. So I still do DuckDuckGo searches, but I also will go to Perplexity and then look at the site, the things that it has sourced for me. So I look at its citations. And I have found that to be, I use them both, actually. I'd say probably do a 50-50 split.
So what would you say is the compelling selling advantage of Kagi over something like CRXNG?
Well, I suppose you're backing somebody. So CRXNG or SearchNG or whatever, however, is it SearchX? I don't even know how to pronounce it. But whatever. That is a user hack around things. It's almost like NewPipe is for YouTube, where it's taking things that are not meant to be used in a specific way and using them in that way. And so it is kind of like abuse is too strong of a word, but it's definitely using loopholes in the system to get at what you want. And as opposed to Kagi, which is a user supported thing that is trying to do the right thing the first time. Like it's built to do that. Just like DuckDuckGo is meant to be privacy driven as opposed to Google. Now, you could argue the merits of that or whether it's actually true, but they have stated that that's what they're trying to do. So it would be like trying to use Google, who is trying to harvest all your data in a way that they can't get at your data, as opposed to using a provider that from the outset is more aligned with what you're looking for.
So you would say the downside, if there was one to something like CRXNG, is that, well, it still relies on Google. Like, okay, fine, we've obfuscated the things that we don't like about Google, but in the end of the day, it's not helpful if Google doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's basically getting around it's like, I hate this thing, except that I'm going to walk all over its yard and use it. I'm just going to go over the fence instead of through the door.
Paid models. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, do I think there's a market for paid models for things when the free alternatives exist? I would have said, are you nuts? Absolutely not. Then places like Proton came out, and by the time Proton came out, the email landscape was so abysmal and privacy focused email was so abysmal. I was like, take my money and then some. And so my attitude has changed considerably. But I'll ask you the question, do you think there's still a market for a paid search model?
Well, I mean, they're still going. I think that primarily I use Perplexity for searching, and so especially recently. So I would answer yes, because I specifically, now I do a lot of coding and stuff like that for work, so I do use it there. But Perplexity over the other ones, its big selling point is the fact that it does a really good job with its quote deep research. And I don't say that glibly. I mean, I think it really does do a good job when you let it go and do the research setting, and which is scouring the web and all the good stuff. So I'd say yes, people are absolutely putting money behind search. They're just doing it in different ways.
If you are a user of Kagi, we'd love to hear from you. Write in at live@asknoahshow.com or give us a call at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, Central Time. 1-855-450-NOAH. It's 855-450-6624. Hey, did you know that you can post messages in the Geek Lab? You can join #GeekLab:/LinuxDelta.com. And inside of there's a bot, and all the bot does all day long, every day, works nights and weekends, works every single holiday. We don't even pay it extra. And Marlon, the bot, sits there and listens for your questions. And if you tag the bot with the question, when we roll in on Tuesday, we'll answer it. So Atypical in the chat room says, what domain registers do you recommend and why? So I'll start with you, Steve. What do you like for a domain register?
Well, we'll fall back on you love to say you're the Walmart of Linux users.
Yes.
I'm probably the Walmart of registrars.
Okay.
I've had a couple, and 2 or 3 maybe in the time that I've owned domains. And honestly, I landed on Namecheap because they actually had what I was looking for, the cheapest at the time. And I just stuck with them. And to the point where instead of finding a registrar and moving everything over where I could actually use Let's Encrypt with a native, like a native API, I took the time to write a giant library of Ansible stuff just so that I could deal with renewing my DNS certs with Namecheap. So that's not a ringing endorsement of them. It just is.
Alex, do you have a website, a domain? Do you register it somewhere? Do you care about that kind of thing? Or is that? You offload that to somebody.
I used to have this great IT guy named Noah that did all that for me, but now I kind of do it by myself by changing his credit card to mine. But yeah, I use R4L.
Okay. So there are a number of different registers. I'm going to go in order of what I like least to what I like most. So at what I would consider the bottom of the barrel is GoDaddy. Nothing wrong with them. Perfectly fine. If you want the granddaddy, so to speak, of domain registers, GoDaddy is there. They do a fine job. It'll be fine. Things that I have not been super impressed with GoDaddy. First of all, trying to find a human being to take control of your situation can be next to impossible. And so this is not an uncommon occurrence. Walk into a business. Who hosts your domain? We don't know. Who registered it? We don't know. When does it expire? Not sure. We should probably track some of this stuff down. And so you start digging. Okay, it's at GoDaddy. All right, so you call GoDaddy. Now, Microsoft, Google, most of these cloud companies have a very documented, easy to roll process for the IT guy walked out the proverbial door and cut the wire on the way out, so to speak, right? And you typically take a thing from a business license or something that has the name on it of the new general manager, or a letter or something like that. You send it in, they get you back in. I have gone through that process, and again, to be fair, GoDaddy has such a process, so it exists. I have gone through that process a few times, and my gosh, you want to talk about jumping through hoops and dancing on one hand to try to prove like, hey, in the end, if I have possession and control over the credit card that renews the thing and I'm the one paying the bill, that should answer 85 to 90% of your questions right there. And then beyond that, matching street address and names and name of business and all that sort of thing. Like there's every other company seems to arrive at a solution faster than GoDaddy does. So that's the first thing I haven't been super impressed with. Second thing is they have a domain buying brokerage. I've tried to use it several times. You want to take a guess at how many times they've been successful at actually getting me the domain name I paid them when they charge you whether or not to get it. Domain name to do the math here in my head, carry the one. 0 times they've actually been successful in getting me the domain that I paid them to get. Next on the list is Namecheap. I like Namecheap. I don't have anything against them. Thing that Namecheap does that not every name register does, some of them do, some of them do not, they support dynamic DNS. And so that's a really big deal. If you're on a home internet connection, you have a dynamic IP address that's changing constantly, there's oftentimes a built-in dynamic DNS client into your router. It certainly exists in pfSense, OpenSense, OpenWRT, those sorts of things. And it will update your domain so that you can get to your home no matter where you are. And they include that as part of their domain registrar. So I think that's really great. And so anytime we do something that's going to involve dynamic DNS, they're my go-to. Namecheap is a go-to, and I think they're wonderful. Little bit higher on the list is Gandhi. Gandhi makes it higher on the list in part because they have every top-level domain known to man and then some. It's unbelievable. The other thing, Gandhi has a web interface that is to die for. It is so clean and organized and neat, and it's welcoming. It's one of those portals that you log in and you just want to spend time in there because everything is so clean and neat and dialed in. Like GoDaddy, there is some unnecessary complication if you ever have a problem and going in to do it. And again, I try to cut these companies some slack because I get it. Like if somebody heists a domain, it's a big deal. So they really need to make sure that you are who you say they are. And so there's some of that goes on with Gandhi. But overall, I've been really impressed with them. And they are my go-to anytime I have some weird domain or if I just want to see what's out there. I have an idea, I have a thing I'm looking for, and I can punch the name in there and it will give me all of the top-level domains that are available. And last, and on the top of the list, in my humble opinion, Register for Less. Steve, you'll appreciate this. They're a Canadian company. And the thing that I like about Register for Less and who you use, Alex, is that, one, they're dirt cheap. So it's $14 to renew, .com, .net, .org, that sort of thing. The second thing is they have the absolute bare minimum cheapest email hosting package I've ever seen in my life at $20 for the year. Then you can buy a pack of 5 for, I want to say it's maybe $40 or something like that. So it's very, very inexpensive to get access to webmail. And so if you're just starting a business, if you're just launching a site, if you just need a place to park domains, some of us collect domains, and I certainly am guilty of that. It's a great place to do that. They allow multi-profile, which I really, really like. That feature has come in super handy. So every domain that I buy is on my profile, but I can assign a subprofile to other things. So if I can log in and see all of my clients' domains, but they can log in and make changes and update, and if they want, take it and transfer it away, those sorts of things. So it allows the delegation of control without giving access to the mothership, so to speak, and yet you always have that single place. I have one username, one password to sign into, and I can see everything. And then it gives me a nice little graph of here's the domains that are coming up for renewal, and I can click now, later, or don't worry about this at all. And so I really don't have enough good things to say about them. But the thing that puts them at the absolute top of the list for me personally, their customer service. It's second to none that I've ever had at a domain registrar. Doug Friend he's been there forever. And every time I've ever had an issue, I reach out. And if it's important enough, I hear back from him directly. Oftentimes, even when it's not important or when it's just run-of-the-mill stuff, I interact with him. He takes tickets just like everybody else does. The customer service is just unreal. And there was a time when my account got hijacked, so to speak, and I couldn't get into it. And I just sent an email to Doug and I said, hey, having this problem. I want to make sure nobody steals any of the domains. Nobody cancels anything. He goes, no problem. I've locked the account. So nobody can log in at all now. And all I want is just please send me a letterhead demonstrating that you are actually Noah from Multispeed. I think I scanned my driver's license or something like that. And proved who I was, and he unlocked my account and got me back in, and everything was great. So personally, I'd work that way down, but again, it kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for dynamic DNS, Namecheap should rise to the top. If you're looking for weird top-level domains, Gandhi should rise to the top. If you're looking for bottom dollar, Register for Less should rise to the top. And if you have other suggestions, then let us know. You can write those in at live@asknoahshow.com. Everyday lessons from a pilot. So, Alex, to give everybody kind of a little bit of history, I met you while I was in high school. It was my freshman year of high school, your freshman year of college. And we met at a police explorers class. You remember that?
Yep.
And so what ended up happening was it was a bit of a weird thing insofar as you would come hang out at the high school, and we were both ham radio operators.
Yep.
So I would sit and talk to you on the radio, and people, who are you talking to? Oh, my friend. Who is your friend? Oh, he's this kid. So that's how our nerd relationship started.
Right.
But then 3 years later, I was going into college as you were kind of coming out of college. And so at the time, computer science department was attached to aviation at the University of North Dakota. And so we bumped into each other quite a bit. And I had a bunch of interactions then with prop heads or other pilots.
Yep.
And I noticed there are some things that are truly shocking to me. Like, for example, in the medical industry, it's just common to say, well, when I was a med student, I stayed up for 5 days straight, and then I went and did 7 procedures in the OR. Yeah. You will too.
Yeah.
Like, well, hold on a second. Are we aware of sleep deprivation? We are. I did it. That's the way you'll do it. Like, well, that doesn't seem very wise. Isn't there mistakes? Absolutely. But that's the way I did it. That's not good, right? And aviation has fixed that. In your world, here's how many hours a human being can stay awake before you start making mistakes. So literally at that time, we cut you off, and then you don't make decisions anymore. You're done flying an airplane. You're done operating, and somebody else will come in and do it. It's a safer way. So in that regard, I think the medical industry has a long ways to come. As I started to dig into the process-driven nature of aviation, everything is a checklist or a reference or a thing. And part of it is you have identified all the variables ahead of time. You figured out, hey, I know at this speed and this weight, if I'm driving down the runway of this length, at this point, I have to go into the air, because if I don't go into the air, I'm going to crash off the end of the runway. So it doesn't matter what else is going on. After this point, we're going in the air. Before that point, we can stop. So let's decide on a point, and then the decision's made for us. We hit the point, we're going. We don't hit the point, we're stopping. And then that decision is removed from your process. You don't have to think about it. It's just, this is how we do it, right? I think the IT industry could learn from that. So start by talking about checklists. What are they, and why do you use them?
Sure. So we have checklists that we use every day. Start the engine checklist, after starting the engine checklist, before taxi checklist, before takeoff checklist, after takeoff checklist, stuff that we're going to use every single flight. We have checklists that are designed for emergency procedures that might be more in depth. So, you've got a pressurization issue. We have a checklist that troubleshoots and fixes the pressurization issue, or at least gets the airplane safely back in the ground. We have immediate action checklists, which are directly in front of the pilot. You grab and can run through something that if it's not done right now, the airplane's going to fall out of the sky. And those are usually only 3 or 4 items, and then direct us into that deeper checklist. And we have memory items. We have a group of checklists that are committed to memory and must be recited from memory for the things that you don't even have time to pull a piece of paper out for.
So, Steve, one of the things that you've told me over and over and over again is knowledge for knowledge's sake. And one of the things that I know you do as a practice, whether or not a client asks for it, whether or not you're getting paid for it, everything you do, you make a point to document it yourself and document the procedure for which you did that thing. Why do you do it that way?
Lazy. I don't want to have to figure it out again.
There's a parallel right there in the aviation industry. You've identified what are the variables. I could click this thing. I could click that. I could use this version of PHP. I could use that one. You figure it all out one time, dial it in, say, this is the thing I know works, so this is the way I'm going to do it. Is that an accurate summation?
Yeah, I'd say that's reasonable. As you know, there's multiple ways to solve various problems in most things. And so I do try to find the most efficient way to solve something, but honestly, once a problem is solved, I just tend to retread that path.
So, Alex, what would you say is a parallel, if there is one, of, well, different people have different styles. This guy likes to do it like this, and that guy likes to do it like that. How does one determine, here's the way we're all going to do it?
Yeah, sure. So at least at my specific airline, there is some leeway to do things how you like. There's a recommended procedure and then there's accepted procedures. And as long as you're not doing something completely off the wall, you can even deviate from the accepted procedures as long as both people agree that it's safe and it's discussed beforehand. So for example, we normally land with auto brakes, but I can say, I'm not going to use auto brakes this one. I'm going to fly the airplane with my own brakes. Or we normally land with some level of automation, be it a flight director or an ILS, whatever. I can say, hey, there's the runway. You agree that's the right runway. I'm going to turn everything off and just fly this airplane visually. And that's perfectly acceptable at my airline, at least. So yeah, there is an accepted procedure for most things, but there is also allowed deviation as long as it's in the name of safety or in the name of proficiency or whatever.
So, Steve, what I'm picking up from Alex is that there's a wide variety of doing things, but really it's all centered on communication. If you were to give us a grade, A, B, C, D, or F, how do you think we would fare up in the IT world as far as our ability as communicators?
So I guess I would split that in multiple categories, because there's large enterprise, then there's small, medium business, and then there's, let's say, project scale. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes.
I would say that in large enterprises, it would probably be a D or maybe lower. And the reason for that is we talk a lot. We have a lot of meetings, but there's also a lot of silos. And because of that, we end up defending our turf for any number of reasons. And so there's a lot of words that happen in the enterprise, but that doesn't equal communication. Not really, right? To me, a communication means an understanding is expressed, whether or not it's accepted, an understanding is expressed, and that doesn't necessarily happen. When you move into the small, medium business, I think that gets better because you have an interpersonal relationship and you probably have a dependency on the people that you are talking to. So as things get smaller, people have to do more jobs, and then you end up having to rely on people to have various skill sets instead of being able to stay in your lane, as the words go. You have to facilitate a little more. And then when you get down onto the individual project level, I think that the communication gets better. I think it would be, by the time you get down into the project level, you're like a B- maybe. It really depends on the individual project that you're talking about. But generally speaking, people feel more free to question whether that's right or wrong. People feel more free to question the ideas or the direction or whatever. And some people choose to head that off by actually publishing their thoughts ahead of time, or at least responding to it, even if the response, I suppose I should clarify and say, communication doesn't necessarily mean you felt good at the end of it, but at least you have an understanding, right? So did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it did. So I remember one time I asked you, Alex, I said, how do you fly an airplane? and you said, well, it's a complicated series of steps I've performed. I said, okay, what's the first thing you do? He said, oh, well, the before flight checklist. Well, what's the next thing you do? Well, the engine start checklist. Well, what's the next thing? And you went through all these things and you finally get to the end. I said, well, how do you actually fly the airplane? Oh, that's easy. You just follow the checklist. And the idea is you have outlined all of these procedures from start to finish every single time. If you do all of those things in the exact same order, you're going to get the same result. Is that a fair summation of?
Yeah, to a point. Yeah, absolutely.
If your process gets interrupted, you start down the checklist and you get 4 items in and somebody interrupts you for some reason, what do you do?
Stop and start over.
Why?
Because you don't want to miss anything, especially if it's a critical checklist. I mean, if it's, briefing the flight attendants and we get interrupted, we can say, okay, where were we? We're going to continue on. But if we're doing the before start checklist and I forget to turn switch X or switch Y on, that could have catastrophic implications later in the flight. So we stop and we start over again.
Why couldn't you just remember, like, oh, I know I left off at X, or I remember doing Y, so I'll pick up from Z?
Yeah, so there's a protocol for that. We have a physical checklist with a marker that we can click down when we've passed a checklist item, and as long as I'm following that and clicking off as I do it, I'm allowed to say, all right, my marker's here, I can continue from that point, as long as the other pilot agrees.
But what I'm hearing is there's no real allowance for, I remember I did that.
Right.
You don't trust your memory.
No, of course not.
Why do you say of course not?
Because my memory's failed me numerous times.
All of us have, right? We don't.
Right.
And perhaps, so I had an experience with my wife. She has a checklist that she runs every morning to get the kids ready for school. And she said, my fatal flaw this morning was I didn't run the checklist. And so I forgot one of the items on it. How stupid of me for not being able to do that. There's only 7 things. I should have been able to knock all 7 of those things out. And my answer to her was, if it was only those 7 things, sure. But when it's, the dog needs to be fed and so needs an extra $20 for this field trip that they're going on, and so needs this thing signed, and so needs clothes because they're having a second gym class. All of a sudden, all of these unexpected things begin to provide information overload. Now you don't have the processing bandwidth to go back and actually say, here's where I left off. And because she does the same 7 things every single day, she thinks she remembers where she left off. But in reality, that was yesterday or the day before or the day before that, because it all starts to run together. And so you rely on the checklist and only on the checklist. If it gets interrupted, start over.
Yeah, and that's one of the huge training issues in every airline, and not so much training issue, but training points in every airline is checklist discipline. Always follow the checklist. Always, do the checklist at the right time. If you go, hey, did we do the before start checklist? I think we did. We did our flow. Okay, let's do it again anyway. There's not a single pilot that I've ever flown with that would be like, yeah, of course we did, dummy. They'd all just go, yeah, I think we did. Let's do it again. Why not? It's 10 seconds.
Does it ever get boring? Does it ever feel like, this again? This is such a waste of time. Does it ever feel like?
No, not at all.
Because it's just the practice of this is what we do every time.
Right. And I'm 100% sure I could recall all of my checklists from memory, but I still pull the piece of paper out and read them, and I don't know any pilot that doesn't, in this industry at least. Now, in general aviation, it's different. I mean, smaller airplanes, which is why you have incidents like people landing gear up. But that doesn't happen in the airliner world. I don't think an airliner's landed gear up in a long time.
We have this concept of run books in the IT industry. In the aviation industry, you would call it a quick reference handbook or a quick reference chart.
Sure. So the terms you use in quick reference checklist it's like a Waffle House menu. It's a single page piece of paper. It's a little bit bigger than 8x12. It's like a legal size paper folded down the middle that opens up like a book. But on that one side is normal checklist, and then on the inside of it is emergency checklist. And so you have an engine fire. That's not something I'm going to do for memory, but by golly, I better do some things really, really quick or we're going to have a problem. I have a quick reference checklist for engine fire, failure, separation, or severe damage in flight. And those 4 or 5 items that are on this piece of paper right in front of me are going to get the airplane somewhere where now we're not going to fall out of the sky. Not going to fix the airplane, not going to get it on the ground, but now we're not going to fall out of the sky. Versus if I have something like a generator failure. The airplane's not going to fall out of the sky with a single generator offline. We've got 3 running, most of the time. I can very easily go into a deeper book called a quick reference, QRH, quick reference handbook, which is kept in the seat between us, and it's 700 pages long and has every procedure in there known to man.
Steve, when do you pull out the run book versus when do you do things, say, So in my mind, there's a balance, right? The one part of the balance is being a professional and understanding the technology to where you've internalized it. You're not following something blindly from documentation. You understand what it is you're doing. I know the first thing I need to do is get Nginx up. I know the next thing I need to do is get my database running. I know that, so on and so forth. Where do you draw that line between this is just, I just want the end and I know the steps that I need, so I'm going to follow the run book, versus as a professional, I want to know how these things work, and so I'm not going to reference the documentation. I'm going to force myself to think my way through the problem.
Well, I guess it depends. Am I playing around or am I doing a thing? Because if I'm doing a thing, I follow the run book.
Okay. So the playing around, that's a professional development. That's a development environment. I'm bettering myself. That is never, I'm doing this in production. That isn't the time to learn. That isn't the time to prove you're a professional. That's the time to follow the instructions.
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, the challenge that we often have in the IT world, that really hard time getting to causality or root cause. We like to say that we do, but really it's the best guess at a thing, because there are so many interdependencies that we end up having guesses, right? It could be this, like we get to a symptom and then there could be 4 or 5 things, and then we kind of knock them off based on what we've unearthed. And I would say, not to be over important, how would you say that? Self-aggrandizing, maybe. Mm-hmm. I think Alex said that earlier in the pre-show, but it's kind of similar to medicine in that way. Is like as you are approaching a problem, you look at the symptoms and you start knocking down what your likely cause is based on the symptoms. Very rarely do you go into the doctor and they follow a playbook and it's like, it's all of these things. It's like, okay, well, you've got this symptom, but also that symptom and this one over here. So it means it's not the cold. It could be COVID. It could also be the flu. Like there's all of these things. And as they dig through it, they're not necessarily following a run book. They're trying to unearth all of the different variables that go into making a diagnosis. And it can be very similar in that regard for us in the IT world. If it was as easy as we see this symptom always has this fix, then they wouldn't call us, they would automate it. And that's just how it would be.
Mm-hmm. Do you see any benefit in something like a checklist where it's not necessarily a procedure that we're following, but more so a make sure these things happened, make sure you put eyes on this, make sure you did that?
100%. Absolutely should be done.
Okay. Where would you say is the time and place to break that out and say, make sure this is always happening?
Before you go to production. So
okay.
I would call it like a pre-production checklist, or a, call it what you will, but like this is the time that before you hit the go live button, you have crossed off all of these things, to include, did you run these tests and did you make sure that these connections are open? Like all of those things need to happen.
In your world, is that given to you, or is that something you come up with yourself?
No, we make them. So we kind of have a base of, we know how our product works, but then the environment where we go to deploy the products are so varied that we don't, to my knowledge, have a matrix of all of these things. Essentially, we start with our base. We know what generically we need to check for. And then as we bump into things in a client's environment, we then add it to their checklist, because as you and I know, you walk into a client and they all could be trying to accomplish the same task for their business, but this person's using Word docs and that person's using PDFs and this person's scraping the web. And like, while the end goal is the same, all of the bits, and you could have 3 clients that are all using PDFs, but this one is using, Foxit, and that one's using Adobe, and like they have very specific reasons why they're using that thing. And so your checklist can be generic and cover generic things, but if you really want to nail it down and be like, okay, before we go to production, you need to make sure that, this person's using F5 for their load balancer, but that guy's using, Cisco and this one over, all of those things make a difference in terms of what the implementation of your checklist looks like.
When you reach for a QRH, the Quick Reference Handbook, Alex, is that every procedure that is not in a checklist or a memory item? Is it we're following it from the instructions, so to speak?
Yeah, the QRH is fixing problems. Something broke on the airplane, we need to fix it. And it covers everything from fires, failures, crew member incapacitation, smoke, fire, fume, anything and everything that's a problem and how to fix it. For the day-to-day, how to fly the airplane, like when do you start the engine? When do you push back? When do you get the weather? When do you do this? When do you do that? We have something called the flight handbook that I think sounds more like your run book, you were calling it.
Okay.
And that goes through everything from when do I check in at the airport? When do I show up at the gate? When do I, introduce myself to the other crew members, and who do I have to brief on what? When do I go out and walk around? Like, can't do the walk around before you've done this checklist, because this checklist turns on the hydraulics, and on the walk around you check the brakes and all that stuff. So there's a lot of that that's in a book, but I never reference the flying handbook unless we're having like a discussion like, hey, I think this procedure changed. Let's talk about it. Hey, here's the revision. That's not a day-to-day thing that we look at.
Because you know it.
Right.
Because you do it all day long.
And that's something that we're expected to know, but we have it there as a reference. Now, as far as checklists, we have normal checklists that we do every flight. And then we have abnormal checklists, the quick checklists. And those are only if something's broken or something abnormal happens. And I would say 99.9% of the flights that I've been on, we don't open those up. They're dusty.
So the Quick Reference Handbook is really more for, this is every possible procedure you would be expected to execute inside of during a flight. Mm-hmm. And it's all outlined for you. So all the decisions are made. Mm-hmm. So you're not necessarily thinking when there's a fire or when there's this or when there's that.
Well, I mean, the first line in our Quick Reference Handbook is this cannot possibly cover every possible scenario. Be a pilot, basically.
What does that mean, be a pilot?
You know how to fly an airplane. You know how to solve problems. You know how to fix things. But this covers the most common ones. This covers the things that are likely to happen. But heck, there might be cascading failures where you have 2 things that are wrong or 3 things or 4 things. You have to pick the most important. There might be failures that aren't documented, that you have to come up with a procedure on your own, and what's the best procedure to do that. And we have resources we can call people outside the airplane or even inside the airplane to work with. But yeah, no, not everything is covered by a checklist necessarily, but most things are.
The procedures that have been, is it fair to say that the procedures that have been tried ahead of time where we know what to do and have thought about what to do, those things are outlined in the QRH?
Yeah. Yep.
And and so then you would reference that to make sure you're doing all the things, but doing them in the right order.
Right. And it's the scenarios that are most likely to happen. It's the scenarios that have happened in the past. It's the ones that we've thought of. There's black swan events that we're never going to think of that golly might happen, that we might not have a procedure for, but we're expected to make the best judgment calls and decision making on that.
What do you do in those black swan events, as you put it?
I don't know. I've never been in one, but I'd imagine that I would use my decision making skills and my pilot skills to get the airplane on the ground as safely as possible. It's really hard to say because a black swan event is something you can't imagine happening,
Fair enough. I want to talk a little bit about human factors. So this is something that I think is fascinating. NASA actually did a whole bunch of studies on how do humans respond? Mm-hmm. How do humans respond? When you stress them, how do they respond? When they get complacent, how do they respond? When they're tired, how do they respond? When they're hypoxic, how do they respond? They tried a bunch of different things and then learned from that and then based some of these things off of those human factors, as well as taught you some things to be defending against at all times. Is that a fair summation?
Yeah.
What is apathy and why is that dangerous?
You do something 1,000 times, you kind of get in the habit of, I've done this 1,000 times. I don't need to really pay attention to it. I don't really need to work on it or follow a checklist or whatever. And they try and beat that out of you in the aviation industry. You always follow the checklist. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of not necessarily apathy, but complacency going on. And we do have ways to fight that. Most of it being 2 crew, and we're both, trying to get our butts safely to where we're going. But yeah, complacency is a big one. Apathy more so is I don't care, and I don't think that really happens because we do care. But yeah, complacency is a huge threat.
So the translation might be, I don't need to back this up. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm moving it from one thing to the other. Yeah. The old hypervisor is still there. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
And Steve, you might say, yeah, there's mitigation abilities. There's a way to mitigate those things. That doesn't necessarily mean you cut corners.
I would say I hope you're running on top of ZFS because that'll save you from apathy.
Save you from apathy or empower you to lean into apathy?
Well, you can lean into it, but it's still going to save you. You couldn't lean into it without something there to catch you.
Fair enough. Impulsivity. What is impulsivity? Why is that a problem?
Oh, do something now, no matter what it is. Get it done. And it's a problem because oftentimes you're not doing the right thing, or you're actually doing something that's harmful or counter to what you're trying to do.
So what would you say to a person that says, well, doing something's better than not doing, standing here not doing anything?
You're probably not the right person to be in aviation. If you have an engine failure and you start pulling thrust levers back, you're probably not a good idea to do. You might shut down the good engine and have a dual engine failure now, which is a whole heck of a lot of a big deal, more worse than a single engine failure, or all sorts of stuff. There's definitely a time and a place for immediate action, but those are well-rehearsed, well-practiced, well-drilled immediate actions that I've done 1,000 times, both in a simulator and in my head, and I know exactly what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it down to the muscle memory. But that's not normal procedures. That's not even emergency. That's like very, very, very slim things. Like, how do you abort a takeoff? Well, you pull the throttles back, you deploy the thrust reversers, you deploy the speed brakes, you put on the brakes, whatever. The procedures there are set in stone, set in your brain, and 100% done from rote memory and impulsively. But there's a very clear trigger to what will cause those, and there's a very clear, well-practiced, well-drilled procedure for that.
So it's not impulsive in we're in the moment. It's
right.
Impulsive in we impulsively start the very refined process, defined process.
Yep.
What's machismo? Why is that problematic?
Machismo, I'm the best at this. I'm the strong guy. I can do this. I don't need you to tell me I can't or whatever. Yeah. Why is that a problem? You're not the strong guy. You're not perfect. Nobody is. So it's something you need to recognize if you're doing it yourself or somebody else is doing it. Correct it.
Steve, I would imagine this is something you're excellent at identifying and excellent at, how shall I say, helping people move past. I wouldn't define you as an aggressive person, but you're also not a person that just, sits idly by. If somebody is flexing, for lack of a better term to use, and they're taking the team or the project or the thing in a bad direction, you are absolutely the kind of person that is going to speak up. How do you deal with that?
That's a longer conversation than we have for 12 minutes left in the radio show, but because it gets into people's psychology. It's not as simple as just having one approach. You have to, and it's not a manipulation tactic, but rather understanding the person, because there are people who are like that and they can't describe to you why, but it comes from a legacy of like, look, I pulled this thing up from the bootstraps. I have a good understanding of where the dragons are laid, and I'm the best person to sort this around. And that could be a legitimate thing. Then there are people that are like, well, I'm just the smartest guy in the room. And that could be as well. But the smartest guy in the room has you take a different tactic than the person that's like, look, I know where all the bones are buried. And you can't really hash that out in the first meeting. You actually have to get to know them. So personally, you play a little bit of the appeasement game at first, just to get on the side of like, look, man, I'm new here. I'm not going to overturn the apple cart, as it were, because I need to get a lay of the land, and I don't have enough information to say one way or the other. And so you may not audibilize that, but in your head, you have to be like, look, I need to get the lay of land. I have to understand what is happening and what is causing this, because first of all, when you deal with those types of personalities and you say something that's wrong and like just verifiably dumb, because they can come at you with like, oh, well, we did this because blah, 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 blah. And they give you 15 solid reasons why this is happening, either like procedurally or, something to do with how the company operates. All you've done is expose the fact that you're being impulsive and you're not taking the time to understand the lay of the land. So it's really a multi-pronged approach. You have to get an understanding of who the person is and what they're doing and why are they acting this way. It could be in the case of you and I, Noah, it's often reaction to the fact that either inadvertently they're being told that they're not good enough because somebody had to hire outside help, or they feel threatened because you know more than they do, or whatever. And you have to identify that. And you also have to figure out maybe the thing they did is actually the best thing. And, you know, it is a really complicated thing to negotiate that.
Do you find in your industry that Dunning-Kruger, the idea that the newer you are at something, the better you think you are, and then the more you do it, the more you realize that you don't know, leads to that? I've always found that the guy who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room is most definitely not, and I know I'm not the smartest guy in the room. And after doing this career, I've been in this career for professionally flying since 2007, so almost 18 years, almost 20 years now. I know there's a whole heck of a lot that I don't know, and I know I'm not the smartest guy in the room. And in fact, one of the interview questions that they ask at my airline, almost every candidate gets asked, how would you rate yourself as a pilot from 1 to 10 and why? And if you answer 10, you're probably not getting the job. My personal answer was, if you would have asked me this when I was a flight instructor with 3,000 hours, I would have told you, show me the keys and I'll teach you how to fly it. And I said, then I went and flew seaplanes down in the Caribbean, and my golly, that was a humbling experience. And I realized I don't know everything. So I said, maybe a 6.5, 7, and I got hired. So that must've been somewhat correct. But yeah, do you find that that's the case in your industry, that you have people that think that they're a lot smarter that they aren't, and the ones that actually are very smart about it and never would ever say it?
I think that there is definitely some of that. Some of that is people. What I have found is that given the type of personality that is often attracted to working with computers, I think there's a higher propensity of tying themselves personally to the work that they're doing. Whether it's, I wrote this script and it turned out that it wasn't the best approach, but you're shooting my baby by making any kind of complaint about it, right? Like, they take it really personally. There's heavily invested in a particular thing, and because of that, you end up with people that will project being the smartest person in the room so that they're not being challenged for one reason or another. Mm-hmm. So there is definitely the I'm new and I'm fresh and I'm up to date on the technology and you're not, you old geezer. There is definitely that involved there, but I think it is also the case that as people build up in technology, you have to become a stronger personality. Usually the quieter ones don't end up rising to the top for one reason or another. And so sometimes the smartest people and the loudest people are actually the smartest people. And so, complicated question.
Anti-authority. What is anti-authority and why is that problematic?
The rules don't apply to me. I know what I'm doing. I don't need to follow that rule because that's a huge problem. And the rules are there for a reason. They're usually written in blood. There are times where, in the interest of safety, we're allowed to deviate from rules and regulations, but we have to have a darn good reason for it, and we'll probably have to justify it. But no, the rules are there for a reason.
What is resignation, and why is that problematic?
There's nothing I can do, and I don't know of any pilot that is in the professional world that would ever give up. We're going to fly the airplane till it's on the ground. But resignation, there's nothing I can do. Why even try? Oh, golly.
So if we were to recap, anti-authority, follow the rules, they're usually right. Impulsivity, not so fast, think first, then act. Mm-hmm. Invulnerability, it couldn't happen to me.
Yep.
But it could.
Yeah.
Machismo, taking chances is foolish. Mm-hmm. And resignation, I'm not helpless, I can make a difference. And so just having those basic concepts in your mind when approaching, and that, I think that absolutely applies one-to-one to IT as it does to aviation, but having those concepts in your mind of here's how I'm going to constructively problem solve, constructively work through a stressful situation. Yeah. In your case, gets hundreds of people on the ground safely. Yeah. In our case, make sure that it doesn't cost business hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we brief everything. We talk about everything before we do it, whether it's a normal takeoff, a normal landing. We talk about what, flap setting we're going to use and why. We talk about what thrust settings we're going to use and why, what brakes we're going to use and why, when we're going to abort and why, And then we have a discussion after that about, hey, if I don't do this, you tell me how to fix it right away. And here's the clear, concise, fix it or else procedures. Like, okay, we're going to land in Burbank. It's a 6,200 foot runway, which isn't very long. My last touchdown point computed is 1,700 feet. If my wheels aren't on the ground by 1,500 feet, you say go around, we'll go around. And I'll even go so far as to tell the other guy, hey, I don't have an ego. I would happily get paid the extra 10 minutes to go around the patch one more time and land again. So
it just kind of sets the pace for everything else.
Right.
Then it becomes a welcoming experience to say, hey man, you missed the mark, or hey, this is not correct.
Yep.
Because you called it out before they did.
Well, not only did we set clear goals, but we also set clear criteria for what to do if those goals aren't met, and a clear expectation that I'm not going to chastise you for telling me I didn't meet those goals. I realize that we're all human and we all make mistakes. Yeah.
Talk to me about the importance of taking emotion out of communication. When you're trying to constructively communicate with somebody else, why is that an important thing to do?
Well, there's a barrier to communication if you're blaming or if you're talking about emotional things. You want to get at the root of the issue and fix the issue, not the person. So not you screwed up, but this is screwed up. not you did this wrong, but hey, this landing isn't going to be within the touchdown zone. We need to go around or whatever. And having a clear, concise way of saying it, not, hey, this landing's not looking good. Well, that could mean a lot of things. A lot of those would lead to me continuing the landing. But if you say, we're not going to make the latest touchdown point, go around, that doesn't leave a lot of interpretation up.
Yeah.
Because I know what I did wrong and what I'm going to do to fix it.
What would you say about the importance of asking for feedback when you're giving a suggestion? So I see a problem. I tell you the problem. I tell you my suggestion. What would you say about asking for feedback to make sure we're on the same page?
Sure. I'll even go further than that. Rather than asking for feedback, saying, hey, here's the problem. What's your solution? And then you come to me with your solution and go, great, that's what I was thinking. Or, okay, that's not what I was thinking. Here's my solution. What do you think? Whereas if I tell you my solution, you're more likely to go, yeah, sounds good.
Okay. It closes the communication. It's
closes
not open.
The loop. Yep. We want to have an open loop. We want to make sure both heads are in the game. So now obviously there's critical things that need I'm the decision maker. Here's what's going to happen. But there's still a what do you think at the end of that.
How do you both seek information and be assertive at the same time?
Use concise language and ask for feedback. And then we also, and I don't know if my airline's unique about this, we debrief everything at the end. So there's always a how did that go at the end of it, where we talk about even a normal landing, perfect flight every day. We're still going to say, how'd that go at the end of it? And we're going to talk about what could have been better, what could have been worse, what we might change next time, even if it's nothing. But there's always a debrief. And a lot of times it was, hey, we talked about that in cruise. Anything else to add? No. Any paperwork to fill out?
Nobody asked us to take a phone number. We're set.
Right.
Alex, I really appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us. Before we take off, anything else that you would say that you would leave people with, that's something that you've learned in your aviation career that you would say, man, everybody should practice this. Everybody should be aware of this thing in daily life because it's just helpful.
Oh, man. I mean, there's probably a lot of different things I could come up with that. Always expect the unexpected. How about that?
Very good. Alex, I appreciate the time. The music in our ears means we're out of time. I appreciate you joining us. We record the show every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central at AskNoahShow.com. There you'll find not only all of the articles and references we use to put the show together, but you'll find the entire back catalog, and we don't trim it. So you can go all the way back to episode 1. You want to keep it up to date on the latest? Head over to noahc.us/listen. There you'll find my broadcasting schedule split up among all of the different places I do that. I'm on X at Colonel Linux. He's at Linux Evans. We're back next week, 6 p.m. Central. AskNoahShow.com. Have a good week.